Hi, I'm Professor Timmy Hamilton, and I'm here to talk to you about test anxiety. Test anxiety is something that a lot of students have, and I have some personal experience with it because I had a classmate of mine when I was in law school who had test anxiety. He was one of the best students in our small section, and we showed up for our first exam. He looked like hell. He was sweating profusely, he had bags under his eyes, and he said, "I don't take tests real well." And he was able to fulfill that prophecy because we all passed. He, who knew the most, failed the exam. So here's what's happening with test anxiety. Students have extremely negative thoughts, and they allow these negative thoughts to overcome their natural cognitive process when they sit down to take an exam. Now, I can't cure test anxiety for you, but I can give you some tips on things that will alleviate some of that anxiety so that at least you don't have the pressure that you put on yourselves, or at least most test anxiety students put on themselves. So I've listed the do's and don'ts up here on the board, and let's go over them one at a time. First of all, you don't want to cram for an exam. A lot of students, because they're afraid of the exam, they delay studying and they delay and delay until the very last minute. They do an all-nighter right before the test, so then they come into the exam very tired, and they put themselves at a disadvantage. They already have the disadvantage of having the anxiety. Now they've worsened that by sleep deprivation and also just not studying as much of the materials they could. So the first thing is never cram for an exam. The second thing I suggest to those who have test anxiety is don't study for the test week with other classmates. It is good to study with your classmates. It's not good to do it the week of the exam if you've got test anxiety, and here's why. What I've discovered with students who have test anxiety is they have a negative voice in their head. They're having to fight this negative voice. The negative voice typically says, "You know you don't know this. You know you're not going to pass this test." So the problem with studying with other students is if you're studying with another student and they know the material more than you do, the negative voice is going to come forward. "Why, look, so-and-so knows it a lot better than I do. I don't have a chance." Or if they do fairly well in studying with the other person, they turn that into a negative. And they'll say, "Well, obviously I know it at the low level that so-and-so does, so we're all going down. Nobody can pass this exam." The point being this: for the week of the exam, don't study with other classmates. You have to slay this dragon on your own. The third thing I suggest is not to look around the room while you're taking the exam, because students that do that allow other things to freak them out. Say they have a classmate who finishes the test, an hour-long test, in 30 minutes. All of a sudden those negative thoughts start to creep in. Focus on the exam. Don't look at the distractions. The last suggestion that you don't want to do is come to class hungry. You have a lot of things already going on. You want to at least make sure, even if you come straight from work to an exam, grab something to eat so you're not hungry at the exam, which plays into some of the do's I'm going to tell you about, which relate to being comfortable for the test. One thing you do want to do is tell your instructor about your test anxiety. A lot of instructors will make special accommodations. I have had students do that, and there'll be an empty classroom next door, so I can move them to where they're alone in a classroom where they're more comfortable. Sometimes they can get it proctored at a separate time of the day. There are all sorts of things that your instructor can do, but you have to tell your instructor about it. Another thing, get to class early. You want to make sure that you're there and ready for the exam rather than just walking in right before the test so that you can get situated. Again, it's all part of lowering the anxiety level. And that plays into our next one: get a good night's sleep, as much as possible. If you have test anxiety and you know an exam's coming up, you may not be able to sleep as well. And some anxiety on an exam is good. It's good to have a little bit of tension because that's a healthy part of the cognitive process. But you want to try and get a good night's sleep if possible. You also want to wear comfy clothes. You don't want to have shoes that are too tight, or something that's uncomfortable that's going to cause you to focus at something else other than the exam. Which brings me to another thing: bring a bottle of water. You want to make sure that you have a bottle of water handy so that you can take a drink of water and process what's going on the exam. And you might think, well, I could just go outside and use the drinking fountain. Well, you could, but that might take 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then once again, those negative thoughts starting to creep in. I'm wasting my time, I'm behind on this test. So we want to eliminate those, so bring a bottle of water. Bring extra pencils. Sounds simple, but what if your lead breaks, or what if you run out of ink? For a normal person, you scramble for a minute to get another pen or pencil somewhere. For the test anxiety person, this might be the thing that pushes them over the edge. Just make sure you have extra writing utensils. And the last suggestion is to take a test drive. And here's what I mean by that. Come into the exam room, if possible, and usually your instructors will help you if you ask them, when nobody else is in the testing center or in the classroom. Sit down, and you'll notice that the desks are the same, the walls are the same, nothing's changed. It's the same room that you're going to be taking your test in. And if you can, ask for a sample exam. A lot of instructors will have sample exams that you can go through ahead of time. And if you take that in the very classroom that you're going to take your test, you'll have a full test drive of the experience. And once you've done that, coming in to take the actual exam won't be as daunting. So again, it's all about lowering your anxiety levels. So those are some things that I suggest anybody with test anxiety do to sort of lessen it, so that maybe they can go in and not have to fight through the fog of negative voices and do well on their test. For additional tips, or if you'd like to order my book, Good Grades in No Time, which is where all of these tips come from, you would log on to www.professortimmy.org. Again, I'm Timmy Hamilton, and I hope you do well on your exam.